Now broadcasting from his hidden bunker and fully stocked bar, it is the Saturday Report with Colt Sebastian Taylor.
Thank you and welcome once again, my friends, to the Saturday Report with me, Colt Sebastian Taylor, adventurer, entrepreneur, and amateur mountain man, and welcome to AWSM Radio, an independent digital-only radio station that plays today's best music, old school classics, along with a rotating cast of all-star DJs. AWSM Radio focuses on mainstream artists, independent artists, along with a variety of interesting music shows and talk shows throughout the day. All we do here is entertain, inspire, and inform. And my friends, I want you to be part of the show. I want to engage with you. So find me on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the Cameo even, and even on Anchor.fm at Colt S. Taylor. Pretty easy to find. At Anchor FM, you can listen to all the past episodes. If you're not exactly available for the weekends, you can catch up on last week's news wherever you want from your favorite particular podcasting device. And of course, if you haven't already, bookmark ColtSebastianTaylor.com, where I update every now and again with new things as well. All right, my friends, let's get ready for this week's Saturday Report. First up, a little bit of housekeeping news here on the TSR with CST, as the kids call it. I will be away next week on vacation. One of the first extended vacations I've taken in, I think over 2 years, maybe more. I don't know. Going up into the mountains of the Appalachians, where I will be cut off from the world with the exception of TV, phone, and internet. But I will be taking next week's off. You will either hear a previous fantastic episode of the show or some delightful music. No reason for you to disrupt your schedule and not tune in to AWSM Radio at 11 a.m. on Saturday or Sunday, because there will be something here that is as amazing as me. So, did just want to have you mark your calendars come next week if you're a little confused. Do not panic. I have not been thrown off the air by the powers to be. Just taking a much deserved vacation, which I will tell you all about in the course of 30 to 45 seconds, 2 weeks from now. Now, while I plan to return in 2 weeks, hopefully this next story doesn't happen to me. I'm pretty confident it will not, but just in case, be on the lookout. Early this week, I read a story that in Croatia, yes, right. What a hard name to sound for some reason. It's a country in Europe, a former Yugoslav republic, along, I believe, the Aegean Sea? It's along the Mediterranean Sea. The police there found a woman, which, not uncommon, but they found a woman on an island, on a remote island, that is apparently has a very large bear population. She was injured, dehydrated, like she has some scratches on her face and arm, dehydrated, disoriented, spoke perfect English. She had no idea who she was. She could not tell authorities who she was, what her name was, or why she was there. Adriatic Sea. She was found on September 12th on the northern Adriatic island of Kirk, K-R-K, so no vowels of that one, by people who were fishing in the area. She was sort of sitting on jagged rocks close to the sea, and they see she needed help, and she wasn't sure, or she knew where she was, or how she got there, or what her name was. So it took them a few days. They put her picture out there all over the world. Missing lady who had no idea who she is tends to get attention, especially found on the island with bears. And she is a 57-year-old from Slovakia, which is a neighboring country. Her name is Daniela Adamkova. And they're able to identify who she was. She speaks perfect English because she has lived on and off in the United States between roughly 1984 until 2015, and she is a jewelry designer. And some of her designs have been worn by famous people, including Diana Ross and Barbara Streisand. So she is a artisan of some skill. She kind of disappeared in 2015. She was working with a company called Adam Kova, which I believe is a jewelry company, and sort of just sort of disappeared. And she was found today. She had no identification, no cell phone, but could speak English, but didn't know her name. One of her former co-workers said that she had run into hard times, and this is a quote, hard times and bad luck, but she was a really good worker, smart, and she has a wonderful heart. And it was pretty weird. Actually, Slovakia, the country, had done a story about her in 2008, showcasing her as a successful jewelry designer from the country. She apparently had been homeless for the last few years. People had kind of lost track with her, and she somehow ended up on this island, and they can't quite figure out how she got on the island. I guess she might have stolen a boat. Who knows? Paid someone to go over there. But she's found. She's getting the treatment that she needs, obviously, and she is being taken care of. She was flown to a hospital in the town of Rijeka, which is, I guess, I'm saying that right. She's expected to be released and put in the care of Croatian social services so she can get further treatment and help that she needs. So a happy ending to that story, fortunately. Not all those do have happy endings, so hopefully she will be able to get back on track and back to designing jewelry again. Moving on to another story that unfortunately had not a good ending. This last 2 weeks, there has been a lot of attention on a woman named Gabby Petito, who was a TikTok star driving across apparently the United States in a van living, and it appears she was murdered by her fiancé, a gentleman named Brian Laundrie. Now, this is a story that everyone, I think, has been exposed to. It's been all in the national news. Woogie, long-time listener of the show, asked me if I had been following the story, and I've been following it casually and whatnot. But it appears from various sources that these two had been driving across, and there were some tensions, and then something happened, and now she is dead, and he is missing. And he's been missing for about 10 days now, which this part actually is more interesting to me. Well, not more interesting per se, but stuff that I like to cover things that everyone has heard about, but I like to cover things that maybe you haven't heard about yet. So the thing that's interesting to me is that it seems like his parents kind of helped him give it a little bit of a slip, so to speak. I guess he was supposed to turn himself in, and then he was missing. Parents said, that he probably went down to the Natural Preserve in Florida to clear his mind, but authorities are thinking, did he? Or did they just drive his car there and leave it there while he went the other direction? So there's currently a manhunt for him right now. He left his cell phone and wallet behind, so you can't track him via the cell phone. And he apparently is an accomplished hiker, so he could be out in the wilderness camping, hiding out. There have been a variety of different sightings of him. Apparently, a trail cam is one of those cameras you lash to a tree, and it just sort of waits until it detects movement, takes pictures of wildlife going by. Saw somebody who kind of looks a lot like him walking a trail in rural parts of Florida, and one theory is he's trying to walk all the way around the Gulf of Mexico to get to Mexico, which is quite a hike. So that is they're looking for him, and we live in a world with drones and infrared cameras and et cetera, et cetera. So if they haven't found him in that nature preserve yet, in southern Florida, the Everglades or whatever. I don't think he's there. So the search is certainly expanding. Currently an arrest warrant out for him, not for the murder of the young lady, but for fraud. He apparently used a debit card that didn't belong to him. I think it was hers. And after she was sort of confirmed to have been deceased, then that's illegal. And so that is technically the reason why they can arrest him now as their investigation proceeds. Now, when she was missing, there was a lot of TikTok sleuths out there trying to determine what was going on. And the most disturbing or just creepy video is this gentleman who's driving an RV himself. It's like 5 or 6 wiener dogs, whatnot. And he has one of those cameras, dashboard cameras, that film things going in front of him and films himself. A lot of them used for insurance purposes. If someone runs into you, you have video proof of showing what the person was looking at and whatnot. So it helps cut down on fraud. But he's driving along this dirt path out nearby where they found her body. And it's just like a normal driving by. And, he drives by a white van. It was very similar to the white van they were driving. But people took this video, which was high res, enhanced it. And as they're approaching, you see the door close, but you don't see who's closing it. And then in the far top left-hand corner, probably higher than what his viewing, where the camera's mounted above him in this large RV, so it has a little bit wider range of view than he had. You see out in a field what looks like disturbed soil, like maybe someone was burying something out there. And apparently, this was unofficial, but the FBI, an unofficial source of the FBI said that all of this internet sleuthing and tips being sent to them really sped up the process of them trying to find what was going on. And they can't really give credit per se, but it looks like they certainly helped crack the case, as it were. So this guy is still missing. If you live in the southern part of the United States along the Gulf of Mexico and have trail cams, you may want to check them for the next few weeks to see if any unusual people walk by. Hopefully they can get their hands on this guy before he gets to Mexico, or he decides to evade justice in another way. Moving along for some happier story. The world's oldest identical twins were certified this week by the Guinness World Book of Records. 2 Japanese sisters are the world's oldest identical twins at 107 and 300 days. They were the third and fourth of 11 siblings born on November 5th, 1913 in Japan on the island of Shodoshima, which I assume is that's that. And actually, this is a very interesting story. Apparently, at the time, it was frowned upon, I guess in Japan in that time, to have large families like that, families of multiple births. So, large families were often separated when they were young. So they went to elementary school together, and then they were separated. One remained on the island, and the other one went to work on Japan's southern main island of Kyushu. And they had apparently, and they grew up, had their own families, and did not really keep in contact with each other. They communicated, but they rarely met. Basically this identical twin sister you saw once a decade. But once they turned 70, which was almost 40 years ago, they started to make trips together to various temples and enjoyed being in each other's company. And they reconnected and spent the last almost 40 years, getting to know each other once again. They were announced on getting this record on a national holiday in Japan, Respect for the Aged Day. Which is a national holiday in Japan, because Japan has a very older population, so to speak. The families told the Guinness World Book Records that the sisters often joked about outliving the earlier record holders, affectionately known as Kinsan and Jinsan, who obtained idol-like status in the late 1990s for their age and humor. Did I say their names? Oh, should I say their names? I feel like I didn't say their names. What's their names? Okay. The sisters are Umio Sumiyama, I think, and then Kumi Kadama. You know, I think one of my most endearing factors is how much I butcher people's names all over the time. So, in Japan, there's 125 million people, and 29%, almost a third of them, are 65 years or older, according to the Health and Welfare Ministry. Centenarians, those who are over 100 years old, there are about 86,510 of them. Half of that, so over 40,000 of them, turned 100 this year. So they were awarded these certificates in private ceremonies separately due to COVID concerns, so I'll keep them safe. But they are both immensely happy with winning this award, or being highlighted as being very, very, very old. So congratulations, sisters, over there in Japan. I hope you tack on a few more years, make that record extra hard to beat for future identical twins. While twins are fun, my friends, there's only one DC. He's one of a kind, and he's here on AWSM Radio with his own show, DC Live in Effect. He is our in-house DJ, and DC mixes it up every Friday night at 9 p.m. and Sundays at 10 p.m. You, my friends, do not want to miss out while he smashes it on the ones and twos, kicking the beats from South Florida week in and week out. He does such an amazing job. He does so much. He actually might have a twin, and they swap out all the time. I'm just saying, it wouldn't be impossible if DC had DC2 or DC squared, and when one DC gets tired, the other one swaps out, becomes DC again. Kind of like the plot from the movie The Prestige. I don't know if there's a way to test that. We'll just have to see. But in the meantime, listen to DC Live in Effect Fridays at 9 p.m., Sundays at 10 p.m., right here on AWSM Radio. We now go to Arizona and Utah, to Lake Powell, the second largest man-made reservoir in the United States, made by the Glen Canyon Dam, where water levels are at historic lows. Next year, there is a 3% chance that the dam, which produces hydroelectric energy, will not have enough water needed to generate electricity next year. Next year, in 2023, that chance jumps to 34%. Yeah. That's a lot. That's quite the jump. So there, in 2 years, in 2023, there is a 1 in 3 chance that this dam will not have enough water to generate electricity to almost 6 million people, or 6 million homes and businesses from Nebraska to Nevada, due to the historic drought they're having there. Nearby Lake Mead, which is the largest reservoir, is also at historic lows in terms of having water in there to generate electricity. In July, the Lake Powell, behind this dam, the water levels had fallen almost 3,500 feet in elevation, which is only 33% its capacity. So it's only 1/3 full. This is the lowest since the last all-time low in 2005. This is pretty bad. In 2025, there's a 66% chance that Lake Mead, which is nearby, could fall below the critical threshold of 1,025 feet above sea level, and would trigger water cuts in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico. There's also a 1 in 5 chance that the water levels in Lake Mead nearby will fall below 1,000 feet in 2025. And once it's below 1,000 feet, it's very close to be considered a dead pool, which means the water in Lake Mead, it will be so low, water cannot go through the Hoover Dam. So the water will stop at the Hoover Dam. That's how serious the drought is there. So dams will be shutting down in terms of producing electricity. And then water will stop flowing through some dams because there's not enough water to flow through dams. So if you look at these pictures here, you'll see where the water used to be, and then below it, it's just bleached white because the water has protected the rocks there from dust, sand, and wind, and you can see how low it looks. Kind of looks like a bathtub ring, so to speak. So this drought has stretched for about 20 years there. Okay, this is the worst drought it has seen in the area since the 1500s, according to research and science. There's not enough rain, not enough snow, too much water being pulled for irrigation and for drinking water, and the water cycle cannot keep up with itself, which is pretty bad. It's going to impact irrigation, farming, drinking water, electricity until things turn around there. And I would say that most folks don't know how to turn it around unless there is a prolonged increase in rain in the area. Now, the funny thing is this dam, the Glen Canyon Dam, in 1983, so this was almost 40 years ago, experienced historic flooding. It filled to the top, and they had to open up the spillways to let loose water. So the way the dam works is that, it fills up and water goes through the bottom, generates electricity. Well, if water gets too high, only so much water can go through a dam to generate electricity. Only so much can. And if more water goes into the dam that's being let out, it fills up. And if it gets to a point, they open up these sort of escape valves so water can flow through it easier so it doesn't go over the top of the dam. If it goes over the top of the dam, it can cause a lot of damage. Well, in 1983, they opened up these spillways, which was the first time they had ever opened them for a period of time, and they started causing damage to the surrounding areas. They thought, if we keep these open, the dam will fail, and that is, well, it'll be a apocalyptic disaster of scales that would be hard to describe. Fortunately, they fixed it and whatnot, but it's funny, only 40 years ago, they had too much water there. Now, barely enough water to run the electricity, the hydroelectric turbines there, and then in a few years, maybe not enough water to even go through the dam, which is pretty amazing. Another fun fact, I think this was at the Hoover Dam. They run the same time, they had lots and lots of water there, and the spillway wasn't enough to keep up, and they were afraid that the water would flow over the top. So they got plywood and sandbags to give the dam an extra foot of water to go up just a little bit higher. Fortunately, it was enough to let enough water out for that to go down, whatnot, back in the early 80s. But big water crisis out there in the western part of the United States that doesn't seem like it's going to come back anytime soon to being okay back there. So definitely something to watch. Going to France, Carlos the Jackal, world-renowned terrorist in the 70s and 80s, seeking to reduce his life sentence for his conviction of a 1974 grenade attack in Paris. His real name is Ulrich Ramirez Sanchez. He has been in jail in France since 1994, since French special forces captured him in Sedan and whisked him away back to France. He was a notorious international, he described himself as a professional revolutionary, but very world-renowned in the 1970s and 80s. Lots of sort of movies were kind of made with his sort of style, like this mysterious European revolutionary terrorist and whatnot. So, anyways, he is currently 71, born in Venezuela. and they're not seeking to overturn the conviction, but hopefully reducing his, well, he hopes to reduce his sentence so he can finally be released after 20 or 30 years. So he is he sort of gained his notoriety in 1975 when he took oil ministers and OPEC, which is an international oil cartel, took oil ministers hostage in the name of the Palestinian struggle in a raid on the OPEC's Vienna headquarters in 1975. Pretty brazen. Security was not what it was in 1975. 3 people died during that attack, and he kind of went around Europe and other parts of the world, causing a whole lot of problems. Usually in France, even though he's Venezuelan, he's mostly associated with France. He was given the nickname of the Jackal, Carlos the Jackal, because in one of his London apartments, a book called The Day of the Jackal, which is a fictional book, was found there, and so he got the name Carlos the Jackal. Also, The Jackal is the name of a Bruce Willis Richard Gere movie, and Sidney Poitier is also in that movie as well. It's actually a pretty good movie. And that movie is loosely based on many the book of Day of the Jackal, also based on him, and it's actually a pretty decent movie for late 90s movies. The Day of the Jackal book, I believe, is it's a book about someone being hired to assassinate Charles de Gaulle in the late 60s or 70s, I don't know, I think 50s. The exact details, and this mysterious agent and whatnot trying to get Charles de Gaulle, very intrigued. It's a pretty famous book. I've read parts of it, but it's held up over time, I find. But anyways, I'm getting off track here. Anyways, Carlos the Jackal is trying to appeal his life sentence in France, 71. See what happens. A lot of life sentences have been overturned in recent years, and maybe this one too. It'll be an interesting path of someone who was public enemy number 1 in the 70s and 80s and the world's most wanted man by Western governments, now asking the same Western governments to set him loose 20/30 years later. Speaking of international intrigue, someone who's wanted all over the world, not because of crime, because she's so great, it's my pal Rox, the beautiful, talented Rox, with her own show here on AWSM Radio, The Rox Sessions. It's a drive time show here, and making sure that your evening commute home is fun, playing the hottest music on the charts, and some other surprises in between. And I'll tell you what, my friends, she will make it rock, Rox style. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars, set your smart device to remind you of it, and don't miss a great episode of The Rox Sessions, especially if you're driving home. Listen, if you're driving home, it's hard to find a good station. Listen to the news. Seems like stations are always playing the same thing. Listen to The Rox Sessions. I promise you, my friends, it'll be entertaining and lots of fun. So, don't forget The Rox Sessions, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., right here on AWSM Radio. Moving to the world of entertainment, there were 2 celebrity passings this week of note. These are names that not everyone probably knows, but for some people, we'll hit them pretty hard. First off, Anthony A.J. Johnson, best remembered for his role in the movie Friday, passed away this week. Cause not yet released, although he had some heart issues in the last decade. Remembered by Ice Cube and DJ Pooh, writers of Friday, as just a naturally funny dude. He appeared in Friday, also in House Party, Lethal Weapon 3, Menace to Society, House Party 2, How to Be a Player, I Got Hooked Up, Hot Boys, and I got the Hookup 2. He was a comedian in the 80s and 90s, performing on Def Comedy Jam and other variety of other different comedy clubs across the nation. Other many stars of the movie Friday posted tributes to him. Apparently had stayed in touch over the years. Writer DJ Pooh in tweet said, "Rest easy, AJ," while sharing a gif of Johnson running down the street with stolen merchandise in his arms, as seen in the movie Friday. Also passing away this week, Willie Garson, best known for his role on Sex in the City. He had appeared in over 300 television shows and in 70 films. He was a longtime working actor. Never achieved stardom, so to speak, but was well loved by his co-stars and other people that he worked with throughout the years. He also did a lot of theater productions, but his best known role is for Stanford Blatch, best friend of Sarah Jessica Parker's Carrie Bradshaw on Sex and the City and spin-off movies. And he had just finished filming scenes for the upcoming reboot And Just Like That. But he apparently had passed away from pancreatic cancer. Cynthia Nixon shared a tribute to him, saying that he was loved and adored on the set. Quote, "So deeply, deeply sad we have lost Willie Garson. We all loved him and adored working with him. He was endlessly funny on screen and in real life. He was a source of light, friendship, and show business lore. He was a consummate professional, as always." So, some of the other things he was in, Cheers, Family Ties, Groundhog Day, the movie Ruby, X-Files, Friends. He was a, quote, working actor. So, Anthony A.J. Johnson, best known for many movies in the 80s and 90s, especially Friday, and Willie Garson, best known for his role on Sex and the City. Both, unfortunately, passed away this week, with many, many tributes from friends and co-actors and co-stars being posted online. We now go to Australia, where this week a 6.0 earthquake struck the Melbourne area, which is, well, a 6.0 earthquake anywhere is pretty strong, but for Australia, it was one of the strongest earthquakes they had ever seen. Where Australia is in the world, earthquakes are very uncommon there. Very uncommon. The fact their deadliest earthquake was a 5.3 earthquake that killed 13 people in 1989. So that's like the best they have there. Compare that to the United States, where hundreds of people can die in an earthquake. They just don't have earthquakes down there. So fortunately, no serious injuries or deaths were reported. There was a bit of damage in the area, basically just bricks being knocked off the buildings and whatnot. No collapses or anything like that, so to speak. But it did jolt a big part of the country and got a lot of attention on social media. No, there's no tsunami on Australia or any islands it's responsible for. But it was of note that there was an earthquake there. I do have a friend in Australia who did say, yeah, it was like a truck driving by. It was a little bit of a rumble, and so it was a little bit shaken down there in Australia, and about half the population apparently felt it there. I mean, there's only 25 million people that live in Australia, but a lot of people felt it. A lot of people felt it down there. Outside of Melbourne, where this happened, there were no reports of injuries or major reports of damage. I'm sure a chair fell over, but most of the minor damage was just some stuff being knocked off of buildings, windows breaking, were reported in Melbourne, and everything else was okay. Now, Melbourne in Australia is the source right now of some pretty intense anti-lockdown protests over the last week that have turned a little violent. Between protesters and police trying to clear them out. Australia has some pretty strict lockdown measures in place. My friend in Australia has mentioned, hello Helena, has mentioned that you're allowed to hang out with people outdoors, groups of people from like 3 or 4 households can hang out with each other in an open field for 2 hours a day, and after that, you gotta go back home. Seems strict, but they also have a very, very low COVID situation there too because of it. And a lot of people aren't vaccinated. Like Australia's vaccination, as I reported in a previous story, not going too well. They don't seem to be getting vaccinations out there as quickly as they would like, so their vaccination rate is a wee bit lower. So Australia is kind of just cut off from the world at the moment until they get that all sorted out, and the earthquake certainly did not help. Where I live, out here on the eastern coast of the United States, not much in the way of earthquakes here. Where I live, in the last 2 years, there was like a very minor one, like a 4.0, just enough to make the house shake like a car was driving by. The biggest earthquake in this area was about 10 years ago. Oh man, 10? Maybe 15. I would say 10. About 10 years ago, in Washington D.C. area. There was like a 5.6 earthquake that was felt all over the place, like all the way up to Boston. And I was down in Philadelphia, and I was at, I might have told the story before, but I was hanging out with a friend, and they were doing construction next door, and we saw all the lights swaying back and forth. And I'm like, whoa, gosh, that's a real close bulldozer. And then CNN was on, like, CNN breaking news, an earthquake has just hurt the wall. Like, whoa! I guess that was an earthquake. Go figure. Other than that, I have not had any experiences with earthquakes, or I think anyone else in my family for that matter. I think my grandmother felt one in the 90s. She just felt like there was a tractor going down the street, and then my grandfather, he was sleeping, so he missed it altogether. But anyways, to my Australian friends, hope you get your vaccination soon, and that's the last earthquake you deal with for another 30 years. Speaking of rocking it, who's rocking it recently here on the show? It's our new sports show, Married to the Game. It broadcasts every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, featuring the sharp, learned sports minds of Brian, Joe, and Mac Daddy, where they bring their insights, analytics, and expertise to the table on all things game. And what kind of sports show would it be without a little trash talking to go along with it? So tune in every Wednesday at 9 p.m. here on AWSM Radio to catch up on all things sports, and follow these fine folks on Instagram. Joe at Turn Up the Jets, Nick at the Mac Daddy Ryan Show, and Brian at bolstered_up_sports. And the show's Instagram, Married to the Game, MTTG Radio, all on Instagram. Highly recommend you follow and engage with them on there. So if you want to be nice little summary of sports stories, you need to listen to Married to the Game, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. right here on AWSM Radio. Next up, we are out of time today. That went rather quickly. I was about to tell you about the football kicker who won the game with a winning kick but lost his fantasy football game because the other guy had him as his kicker. But I don't have time to tell you about that. Maybe you'll hear about it on Married to the Game. My friends, we have come to the end of this week's show. Just as a reminder, I will be on vacation next week, so you will have to just hold out a little bit longer than usual to hear my lovely voice here with all your up-to-date news and whatnot. But thank you, my friend, for joining me here today on the Saturday Report with me, Colt Sebastian Taylor, or as the kids say, the TSR with CST. Remember, you can find me on the Twitter, on the Instagram, the Rizzle, Cameo, and Anchor.fm at Colt S. Taylor. Subscribe so if you miss one week's episode, you can get caught up later in the week on your preferred podcasting platform. And engage me with there if you think there's a story I missed that you think I should cover. And of course, if you haven't already, bookmark ColtSebastianTaylor.com. Until next time, my fantastic friends, I am, of course, your pal, Colt Sebastian Taylor, and I'll see you later.